Ladies and gentlemen, no man is an island. But the ability of the wealthy to make themselves inspired has negative consequences both for the issues of wealth inequality and social cohesion within the developing world. Three things, Prime Minister. First of all, I'm going to define what we mean by ocean and outline comparative view. Secondly, I'm going to the first our incentives for improvement are removed by the existence of gated communities. And finally, I'm going to talk to you about how it is illegitimate for individuals to opt out of the jobs of society and the consequences when they are allowed to do so. So first of all then, in terms of definition, we think gated communities are fairly self-explanatory. We think anything from which you have to pass a roadblock to get to, where sort of private security companies are employed. Basically, any community which denies access to outsiders to use the services which are contained within. We support rampant redistributed taxes on outside the house, but why not? And we support major investments in public works and services. We also have to recognise the reality that in order to get that sort of political impact, you do need to give the wealthy an incentive to support those sorts of measures, an incentive will be created on our side of the house. What's the comparative that we outlined for you today? We recognise that wealth inequality is still going to exist. We recognise that wealthy will still probably employ private schools, and still send their children to private schools. What we are saying, though, is that the increased exposure to the majority of society and to the poor in the society in the developing world is going to create an incentive and a motivation for the rich to contribute in wider society and generate the development and improvements which are so drastically needed in the developing world. So first of all, let's talk to you about the incentives for improvement which are removed by the existence of gated communities. When you live in a gated community, you have the ability to completely gate yourself off, not only from the rest of society, but all those who live within it and every sort of measure which exists there. You drive out of your compound in the morning in your air-conditioned car with tinted windows, going through the townships. You instead fiddle on your iPod rather than look around at the crippling inequality that exists within it. When you return overnight, you're able to use your own shops within those communities. You're able to attend your own bars within those communities, and you completely separate yourself from the reality which exists around you. No thank you. Why is that? A couple of reasons. First of all, on a very basic level, you do not have the exposure to the people who live outside of you. You do not gain the sympathy for their condition. Maybe you don't even realise the reality of their condition. I'll take closing in a little while. The consequence of that is that you don't have the pressure that's on you to lobby for change for those sorts of movements and for those sorts of communities.
Excellent. If I'm the female CEO of a development bank with massive potential to improve the situation on the ground for ordinary South African people, why should I risk moving to a nation which presents a manifest risk to my physical and sexual safety?
Okay, so first of all, we think the sorts of measures we are proposing are going to enable people, are going to put the pressure on people to lobby for the improvements, to develop those sorts of things. We say the reason you probably want to go to South Africa, if you are CEO, is because of the business opportunities that it presents to you. I think you have, if you want to access those business opportunities, you're going to have to contribute towards it in order to improvement, you're more likely to develop that. Moreover, Tash is going to talk to you about the very sorts of problems that it's outlining, that rich Westerners are able to come in to gated communities, do not gain a true sense of the reality in South Africa, gain a warped sense of what that nation is like, in how the Westernized notion of what that nation is like, meaning that there is not improvement in real terms and there is not an actual proper cultural engagement. No thank you. What's that become furthermore when you put yourselves off from these communities? You first of all are not forced to interact with the poor. Secondly, you're not forced to interact with the services, which are in lots of instances inadequate. So, for example, you will frequently have your own security, meaning that you don't have to rely on the police. You will have your private gardens, meaning that you don't have to rely on public works. You can have your own second sewage works in lots of instances. No, thank you. What is the consequence of that? First of all, individuals feel divided and they are able to opt out of things which exist in that country, opt out of the law, opt out of that state, something I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later in more detail. Secondly, though, there is no reason for them to want to support in order to effect the changes which are needed. For example, whilst we say there are some altruistic people who live in these communities, most of the time when we are voting in our own interest, right? We have egoistic reasons to vote. If you do not make people interact with the sorts of words which are necessary, you are unlikely to get the change. No, thank you. The comparative, though, is when you do have the rich are forced to rely on sorts of public works and services, those services improve dramatically. You point to the example of Chile, which has one of the best public transport systems in the world, because the levels of traffic there means it's unworkable for rich people to simply use the roads. As a result, there's been massive incentives to invest in train and tram systems, which the rich now use interacting with the poor on a daily basis, meaning those services are available for everyone. And that's the point here, right? When the rich go out to these communities and put pressure on for change, the standards of the public works in general are risen up, right? And the individuals who live outside of those communities are able to access the benefits.
Why are you banning security guards in private schools also?
We might be happy to do do those things as well. That's not what this debate is about. We think the gated communities represent a particularly egregious example of the sort of wealth inequality which I am outlining. First things are consistent with our principles. We'd be happy to advocate them as well. Second point of substantive powers is illegitimate to opt out of these communities. When you live in a society, you agree to two things. First of all, you agree to abide by that society's laws. Secondly, you agree to contribute to it in a meaningful way. Why is that a problem in these sorts of communities? Two reasons. First of all, you don't have to abide by the laws. These people often become a law unto themselves. In countries where there are, for example, laws against licensing of bars and pubs, for example, individuals are able to drink later in these communities. They are able to opt out of the laws which govern them. We say that's in health, we say it's illegitimate to do so. So when you live in a society, you consent to abide by its laws. Secondly, and more perniciously, though, you don't have to contribute, right? We think there is a council obligation to treat people as not as means, but as ends in and of themselves. Why do these gated communities do that? First of all, because they withdraw staff from these communities. They take people out of them and use them for their own ends. More perniciously and more importantly, though, individuals within these communities pick and choose which aspects of the state they rely on, then withdraw themselves in order to provide for themselves, rather than opting in, rather than encouraging and interacting and developing those of the state. So, for example, if you live in these gated communities, you are reliant on the outside community potentially for your job. But when you return of an evening, you are able to attend your own shop. You are not contributing to the economy back, and we say that's fundamentally unfair. We say individuals have an obligation to contribute to the society which is around them. Moreover, we say the attachment to talk to you about in more detail. The microeconomies which develop within these communities actually prevent the spread of wealth into wider society. Individuals don't contribute their wealth to the outside in a way which would be beneficial to everyone within those communities because they are instead keeping it within themselves. So the flow of wealth and lack of diffusion of wealth is an enormous problem. Finally, what we say on how it's illegitimate to opt out, when you live in a society, you make an agreement that you are going to interact and have a basic level of interaction and overflow with the people who live there. You agree that you are going to talk to them. You agree that you're going to meet with them on a daily basis. You do not agree and say it's illegitimate for you to exclusively view your country outside your gated community through the prism of the tinted windows of your Chevrolet. We say that gives you a warm picture which leads to negative political consequences for everyone in society. Ladies and gentlemen, gated communities are a reinforcer of wealth inequality where it needs to be broken down the most, and I'm exceptionally proud of those.